But the reason it's so important is never before in the history of these kinds of events has it been possible, going back to ancient times, has it been possible to put in some kind of judicial proceeding under oath all of the evidence related to the killing of a major figure. That's what separates us from everything else that's happened. And I'm sad to say it's of little use to the American people because they don't know about it, but at least it's there in terms of historical interest, and it's there for you to tell your children about and their grandchildren about, and nephews and nieces and other loved ones and friends, because otherwise it doesn't go anywhere. It's a valuable case history for how governments work, how governments proceed, how governments remove opposition and end dissent. And the importance of dissent should be so clearly established in our framework today. In these times, where you have a mentality of anxiety and patriotism that's being stressed to such an extent because of this threat of terrorism that has been created, anyone who is dissenting is looked upon, as Martin King was looked upon, as a traitor. So that it's important that activity be enhanced. John Adams said that dissent is the highest form of patriotism. Long have we forgotten that, but we must keep that up. This kind of case stresses the worst that government can do. Now, this is not just the government of this republic. This is all governments. Salisbury was Prime Minister of England. He tried to set up Victoria to be assassinated, but then set up 2 IRA guys to do it, caught the IRA guys, blocked the assassination, and then went after the IRA. This goes on. Augustus Caesar spent 1 whole year using a public relations campaign to vilify Mark Antony so that he could create public support for the war against Mark Antony and the March on Egypt. And this little wimpy guy, Augustus, was brilliant at what he did. And eventually he whipped Rome. It took him a year to do it because Mark Antony was the greatest warrior in the history of Rome. So there are historical precedents that go on and on. But we live here and now, and this is our native land, so we should be concerned about what these latest empirical figures are trying to do. The Northwoods Plan should teach us. How many know about the Northwoods Plan? We have a handful of people who know about the Northwoods Plan. Northwoods Plan was devised by Admiral Lemnitzer in 1959. And he, after the Cuban Revolution, developed this plan for the killing of American citizens on the streets of America by special forces soldiers disguised as Cubans for the purpose of justifying an invasion of Cuba. This is not a fantasy. It's a horror story, isn't it? So horrible you don't want to believe it. It's now been released. The documentation under the 40-year rule was released. It's been published by James Bamford in a book called Body of Secrets. It's historical fact undeniable. This is what the government was going to do. This is what Lemnitzer was charged with doing. So this young guy comes in as president, Jack Kennedy, and he sees this scheme. He says, "What are these guys nuts? This is crazy." In his incredible naivete, Kennedy couldn't believe that there were people who would think like this and do these things. But these are the forces who run the country. And if you are a president or a elected public official and you don't go along with these forces in the shadows, they will find ways of getting rid of you. I don't need to tell you what's happened to Cynthia McKinney and others and the campaigns that have been waged against people. And Russ Feingold probably is next on the list because he was the only senator to vote against the Patriots Act. So the King case emphasizes, allows us to focus on all of these things. He was never replaced. And because he was never replaced, there has never been an effective movement to accomplish the goals for social change that he embodied and he was committed to toward the end. So they were successful. They kept the lid on for so long. But it may at last be coming to an end. There may be that possibility to take what he called a neighborhood that we have created and make into it a brotherhood. It may be possible to take those means, which he said are unimproved means, that I always reverse that. He said we have improved means to reach unimproved ends. It may be that we can switch those things around, and psychically I keep trying to do that with the anti-globalization movement and now the anti-war effort. Perhaps now the seeds of movement again are beginning to grow in this land. If not, I'm afraid that this great republic is on the way to fascism. I see the door to fascism now opening wider every day. And it's difficult to think of how one can stop it. Mr. Jefferson said there was a way. He said every 20 years, the way is to cleanse the body politic with a revolution. Now, how wise is Mr. Jefferson? Well, when Jack Kennedy had all the Nobel Prize winners for dinner at the White House, he raised a toast to them. And he said, never before has there been so much brilliance seated round this table for dinner, except when Mr. Jefferson dined alone. I think Mr. Jefferson's wisdom, at least in this respect, is with us still today. And how long it will take before we have an implosion remains to be seen. But in the neighborhoods and the communities,